Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Thursday morning by Derek Brown and by Andrew Erickson. Fellas, we are talking about the Week 10 must-sits. We are now officially into the second half of the season for everybody. Let's start off where we always do at the running back position. And Erickson, I will start with you. Who is your number one must-sit running back of Week 10?
Gus Edwards, third time in a row I'm bringing him up on the show. I am 1-1. Hit 2 weeks ago, came up short last week because he scored 2 touchdowns and went over 50 rushing yards on 5 carries against what I thought was an elite Seahawks run defense. Did not work out that way, but I mean, look, eventually Gus Edwards is not going to find the end zone. Just the fact that the Ravens are scoring rushing touchdowns at an unsustainable rate, they're going to throw more touchdowns eventually, and that's going to hurt Gus Edwards. You're seeing this backfield kind of turn into a three-way committee now. Now they're talking about getting Keaton Mitchell more involved. Justice Hill continues to be involved. So just factoring the matchup against the Browns, it's a tougher matchup overall. I don't expect a lot of scoring. Just look at the total in this game. I think it's like 36-37. Just not a good environment for scoring. And when you look at the Ravens when they played the Browns earlier this year, they were gifted red zone possessions. Like the Browns kept turning the ball over because they started DTR. So even though they put up 28 points, that 28 points I think is a little bit fraudulent. So I don't think that the Ravens are going to score a ton in this game overall. So if that's not going to happen, then Gus Edwards is going to suffer. So I'm going to be keeping him on the bench this week.
Yeah, I do think the Ravens will kind of win in a similar fashion to the way they did against DTR, because I just do think Deshaun is going to struggle against this defense as well. Like the Ravens defense, specifically pass defense, does a lot of things that Deshaun Watson doesn't like to go against, at least this new iteration of him. But obviously, the defense of Cleveland is super good. So I totally get that. DBro, we talked, Erickson and I talked a bit about Gus Edwards on Tuesday's show. So I want to get your opinion here too, kind of rest of the season. There's so many factors going on with Gus. He's scoring all these touchdowns. He's clearly the top option when they're down at the goal line, but he's not getting a ton of volume. We just had this amazing breakout from Keaton Mitchell. What do you kind of make of Edwards going forward here? Not just in this matchup against what is a very tough defense, but in general, rest of season on Edwards, DBro?
I mean, I look at Edwards as a top 24 running back rest of season. I think that we also need to understand the context of Keaton Mitchell getting the run in garbage time. And the thing that I think we need to also understand is that Gus Edwards has been playing extremely good. Like all of his tackle breaking metrics have risen massively over the last few weeks. He's top 20 in almost everything I can find as far as efficiency for running backs. So I don't look at Edwards as playing himself out of this role. And if anything, if Keaton Mitchell does earn a more substantial role moving forward, that's not going to come at the expense of Gus Edwards. That comes at the expense of Justice Hill to me. So I don't think Gus Edwards is losing his job. He's still a top 24 back rest of season. And with Baltimore continuing to find itself and playing better as an offense moving forward, top 20, top 24 back moving forward.
We actually do have a poll on Spotify on our most recent episode about Keaton Mitchell. I want to get your guys' opinion on that as well, since he just had such a stellar kind of breakout game there in Week 9. The question that we have posed that everybody should go vote in: will Keaton Mitchell lead the Ravens backfield in fantasy points the rest of the season? DBro, what do you think about that? It sounds like you're saying no, it'll still be Gus.
No, assuming Gus Edwards' health, and I know he's dealing with the toe issue, which he's not on the injury report this week. So again, going back to last week's performance, him getting pulled in that game, if he's not on the injury report this week, then we got to assume that was just because of the blowout. So again, he's playing good. This is his backfield, assuming health. No, it's easy Gus Edwards for me.
That was interesting to me, though, because he got his last touch was the first play of the third quarter. They were only up by 14. It's not like this was already a 30-point blowout when he stopped getting touches. So I was surprised how early they pulled him, if it's not injury related.
Yeah,
but
agreed.
Yeah, that was interesting. Erickson, what do you think about that poll question? Will Keaton Mitchell lead the Ravens backfield in fantasy points the rest of the way?
I mean, I don't think I can confidently say any of these Ravens running, because the Ravens have shown us through years when it's not J.K. Dobbins, like they're willing to just go with whoever is playing well. And right now, Gus Edwards is obviously playing well. But something I want to point out about the Ravens is they've had a pretty easy schedule, like to start the year. And they have the most difficult schedule for the rest of the season when it just comes to looking at the average total wins of their second half opponents. So Gus Edwards has been playing with leads. Like that's why he's been effective. Like he's had almost like the perfect run. And when they've played good teams, it's been at home. So they've had that advantage. When they fall behind, who's in the game? Is it Gus Edwards? I don't think so. Like they've shown like more back and forth contests. They like Justice Hill, and now maybe they like Keaton Mitchell because they want an explosive element to get more points. Where Gus Edwards is the guy they use to kind of grind out clock as the banger back. So again, if I had to bet on it, I would bet on Gus Edwards, but I'd rather take like if I can get like longer shot odds on Keaton Mitchell, like that's probably where I would see more value. Just looking at this backfield for the rest of the season.
To Erickson's point, his schedule kind of gets pretty tough as far as when you start week 12. Like, I think you could run on the Browns a little bit better than most people do, and he gets the Bengals after this week. But after that, I mean, weeks 12 through 15 are horrendous. The Chargers, the Rams, who are now a pass funnel, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, that's a pretty rough schedule.
The results of that poll so far, Keaton Mitchell, yes, about 40% of the vote. Yes, he will lead the backfield in fantasy points the rest of the way. About 60% saying no. DBro, give me your top must-sit running back.
Prisoners of the moment, man. You hate to see it, man. People just overreacting to one little snippet.
It was an exciting week.
I get it.
He had 4 carries in the first half. He had 4 carries.
Yeah,
he had 14 snaps the entire freaking game. But whatever. I digress. I'll move on. My first guy to bring up here is Kareem Hunt. His snaps declined to 29% last week. I think that people need to understand that Jerome Ford is healthier. He got a whopping dose of volume last week. And with Kareem Hunt, he's been one of the most inefficient running backs in the NFL this year. Amongst 45 qualifying running backs, this man's 44th in missed tackles forced per attempt and dead last in yards after contact per attempt. So looking at all of that, as well as you add in Baltimore has the 9th highest stuff rate this year. So I think that we're just going to see another week of Kareem Hunt just running into brick walls. Maybe he sucks at a touchdown because he outpaced Jerome Ford in red zone touches. But if Jerome Ford is healthier this week, which I hope he is, then I think Kareem Hunt has to be a sit. I know he's in that flex conversation for people weekly, but I do not want to put him in my flex spot this week.
Yeah, Hunt's RB32 and half PPR running back rankings. Is that too high, too low, or just right, D-Bro?
I'm looking to see where I've got him. I want to say it's a little bit too high. Kareem Hunt, where are you at?
I mean,
I've got him right at RB32.
Score a touchdown. Like that's the only thing he's good for. And he scored 5 touchdowns the last 4 games. Like that's not. I don't think that's going to keep up because if he doesn't score, he's going to give you a 0. So
well, and I've got him at RB32, but I mean, honestly, like as I kind of continue to look at my ranks, knowing that I'm going to update some more of this, like I'll play Tyler Algier over him. I will move Devin Singletary over him if Dameon Pierce gets ruled out. There's a bunch of guys in that scrum there in that RB3 range. Like even give me Justice Hill over Kareem Hunt, and I feel like they are the Spider-Man gif. Like they're staring at each other like, huh, you, me, no. So all those guys I would play over Kareem Hunt this week.
Erickson, give me your next must-sit running back.
Brian Robinson is facing the Seattle Seahawks this week. I know Seattle got run over last week by the Ravens, but that's a different team. I don't think that the Commanders are a team that can actually run the football. They can only run it when they're winning in games. They want to throw the ball. You know, having one of the highest pass rates over expectation this season, they just more than happy to just drop back and throw with Sam Howell. So, look, I'm going to believe that the Seahawks run defense bounces back. Another week with Leonard Williams in the fold. They're playing at home, and Brian Robinson is still losing out on pass game work to Antonio Gibson. So, Seattle jumps out to a 10-0 lead. Brian Robinson might be cooked, like at that point, and he needs to score. So, I would try to get away from Brian Robinson, and I think that he's like a sell high guy, you know, based on the touchdown. And he also fumbled last week too. So, again, they didn't go away from him necessarily to Gibson because they still like Brian Robinson as their starter. But again, Gibson at least looked a little bit better to me. So maybe you could see more of a split here up in week 10.
Would you be that surprised, Erickson, if after the fumble last week, if we saw more Chris Rodriguez this week? Because we've already seen that in previous iterations.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's like, you know, we saw Chris Rodriguez play like a couple snaps like in the red zone like a couple weeks ago, and then they just never went back to him again. It was just like weird.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, it's always possible. It's just like, I would say Brian Robinson is like, he's just really fringe. Like, I don't feel good about playing him, which is why I obviously brought him up here. And again, the matchup's not good. Even though Seattle got run over last week, I think that was more about the Ravens just totally curb stomping the Seahawks defense versus, the Seahawks run defense sucks, when every other week this year they've been lights out.
Robinson is RB26 in our staff rankings. Again, that's half PPR. That's been about his floor in most games this year. He's had a couple games lower, but for the most part, he's been in that, RB2 range. most weeks. Do you think that's a fair ranking, Erickson, and you're just avoiding him because you don't believe in the ceiling this week, or do you think that's actually too high?
I mean, I have an RB31, so there are other guys I would prefer over him in those other like the Tyler Algiers. Like basically, I would rather play a lot of running back twos on teams with better matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Like probably play Najee over Brian Robinson, even though I have Warren ranked higher than Najee. Probably play Zack Moss over Robinson.
Kareem Hunt or Brian Robinson?
I'd play Brian Robinson over Kareem Hunt, but that's about it. And like Devin Singletary, I have right next to Brian Robinson, but I don't expect Damon Pierce to play open the week with a DNP. That's usually like a pretty grim sign. I mean, you missed the week before. So Devin Singletary, I'll just bet on the touches. I know he's not very good, but he played 75% of the snaps and he plays on a good offense. So I would probably play Singletary over Robinson as well.
If you guys need new tires for your car, Discount Tire is your go-to. They have exceptional service, and you get a 30% shorter average wait time when you buy and book online at discounttire.com. They have this really cool feature called Treadwell, which is an online tire buying guide that gives you transparency on tire performance, as well as personalized recommendations based on your location and driving habits. Discount Tire is also the largest independent tire retailer in the country, so it has the biggest selections of tires and wheels. And here's a pro tip from the experts at Discount Tire. You can prevent wear and boost gas mileage by keeping your tires properly inflated. Tire pressure supports the weight of your vehicle and is important to check for safety. So if it's been over a month since you last checked your tire pressure, stop by one of their local stores for a free tire safety and air pressure check. Discount Tire. Let's get you taken care of. DBro, hit me with your next must-sit running back.
Well, we keep talking about all these flex plays and stuff. I don't want people putting Zack Moss in their flex this week. His role has been vaporized. Jonathan Taylor is fully back. He is the workhorse. He is getting close to bell cow usage. I think the ramp up is done. And if it's not done, then we're going to see Jonathan Taylor playing 80% plus snaps. So looking at Zack Moss, the workload, like I said, has gone away. Last week, only 7 touches, 26 total yards, and he's not getting any pass game usage because Taylor ran all the routes, basically. He's also losing out to red zone work, so there's just no parts or pieces or reasons to even worry about plugging in Zack Moss into your lineups, but I know he has been that good and still a part of this backfield for multiple weeks, even with JT active, so I have to bring him up this week to understand, like, let people know, do not flex this guy. You're looking at a backup running back that should be like in the RB 40 range outside the top 36 running backs this week.
And this is now kind of you're saying moving forward. It's not just specifically this matchup. It's you should stop playing this guy most weeks.
Yes.
All right, I think that's fair. Erickson, give me your next must-sit running back.
James Cook placing the Denver Broncos. So Cook has obviously been disappointing the last couple of weeks. Really hasn't done a ton. The Bills just haven't really shown that they can establish the run game whatsoever. They signed Leonard Fournette a couple of weeks ago. Fournette was inactive this past week. I would expect him to probably at least suit up for this next game. I haven't seen anything about his current status yet, but another week ramped up. I think that just based on how bad the run game is in, I think that the Bills would be willing to try anything at this point. And Cook obviously doesn't have touchdown upside because he doesn't get any red zone usage. So that's something that's always a given. So really the bet on Cook is like, all right, he has to like rip off this like 80-yard touchdown. Like that's what you're betting on when you start Cook every single week. And you look at the Denver Broncos, you're like, okay, well, they've been a defense that's given up a lot of big plays, but that was really all against like the Miami Dolphins and Breece Hall. Like, but besides that, the last couple of weeks, they placed the Chiefs twice. Isaiah Pacheco, look at him. He's an explosive running back. Did really much nothing. So you're looking at the last 3 running backs they have faced. The top finishes have been RB21, RB16, and RB41. So 2 of those were Pacheco, and 1 of those was A.J. Dillon. So, I mean, you're hoping that James Cook can be like RB20. And, you know, that's where I have him ranked in that RB back in RB2 range. But I don't think there is a ton of upside unless he rips off that massive run, which just based on the fact that the Bills are going away from the run game, they just can't really run the football. I think that you can probably sit James Cook for another player with probably more upside this week.
He actually is.
What if I told you? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say he is exactly RB20 in the expert consensus rankings as well. So you're very much in line with consensus, Erickson. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Go ahead, DBro.
What if I told you I had James Cook ranked as an RB3 this week, Erickson? I don't want to play James Cook. Like, if Uncle Lenny is active, plus, what have they shown any kind of commitment to James Cook? Like, I will play Alexander Mattison over James Cook. Give me Jerome Ford over James Cook. I'll play Deontay Foreman in the Thursday night game over James Cook. I will play Jalen Warren over James Cook. All of these guys are producing and getting very similar workloads. Like, there's just not a lot of parts or pieces where anything's screaming outside of the supposed great matchup, which Erickson hit the nail on the head. Pacheco hasn't even done anything versus this team. And that's a team. Kansas City is trying to get their run game established, and they still haven't done anything. Do we think James Cook behind a lesser offensive line is going to do anything? No.
Last 5 games for Cook in half PPR, he's finished RB 41, 31, 8, 28, and 31. So 4 of the last 5 weeks, he has
RB3.
Not only been in RB3, he's been in RB4, at least one of those times. So definitely a tough stretch for him here.
I think we're still ranking him as an RB2, but just based off of name cachet alone and not the production.
Well, and again, we said this for the last couple of weeks too, like given the teams on bye and the injuries, like you have to rank people somewhere. But I get it on Cook. I mean, there's no reason to be aggressive on him this week.
I just know a lot of people are going to ask about James Cook. Like, what? Just saying, you can just bench him. Like,
that's.
Straight up, Erickson, here. Alexander Mattison or James Cook, and I know you have not been a big proponent of Madison either. So. Hit me with it. Come on.
Madison keeps catching all the breaks because Cam Akers is out for the season now, and I'm not like a Ty Chandler person. So I mean, the Saints matchup's not necessarily great either. But I'll take Dobbs. I'll take Madison. Saints can't stop mobile quarterbacks. So
you play Jalen Warren over James Cook too, right?
I mean, he's way safer. Like he's got a floor, and he's the better running back on his team. I know that. So. Yeah,
right. Top 24 running back in 7 of his last 8 games too.
DBro, give me your next and last must-start running back.
Okay, I know people are going to throw this in my face because Rachaad White scored 2 touchdowns. Mine, that's 2 of his 3 only touchdowns of the season. So when I bring this up, I'm going to say temper expectations on Joe Mixon. In the previous 4 games, the Houston Texans have clamped down against the run. Those 2 touchdowns for Rachaad White are 2 of only 3 rushing touchdowns over the last 4 games. So good luck chasing that. When you're talking about also since week 5, this run defense is bottom 10 in basically everything you look at. 5th lowest fantasy points allowed via rushing. 2nd lowest explosive run rate. 6th lowest yards after contact per attempt. Now, can Joe Mixon get there on checkdowns? Because Chase is banged up. T. Higgins left practice this week with a hamstring injury, so I don't even know if he plays this week. Could Mixon get there based off of just pulling his best Uncle Lynn impression and getting checkdowns and not doing much but scoring once? It's possible, but if he does not get into the end zone this week, I'm telling you that Joe Mixon's probably going to be letting you down.
He's RB9 in ECR. Do you have him outside your top 10?
I have him at, I've bounced him anywhere between RB 11, 12 to being a mid-range RB2 this week.
Okay. Let's do some player comparisons here with the Who Do I Start tool. This is free to use at fantasypros.com/start. Anybody can head there and put in their own start or sit questions, up to 4 players at a time, which is a feature I really like. You can even pick and choose which experts your decision draws from. Again, this is free at fantasypros.com/start. Erickson, would you rather start in the same game Gus Edwards or Jerome Ford this week?
I'm going to start Jerome Ford because I'm more confident that he led the team in targets last week. He's going to get peppered with targets. So that's where I feel confident about him having a role in this offense. And that I think is more sticky snaps, the touches, the targets versus, Gus Edwards has to score a touchdown. Like Jerome Ford doesn't have to score a touchdown to be productive in fantasy. So that's why I'm going to start him.
How about Brian Robinson or Chuba Hubbard?
Coming at me with the Thursday night players, Worm. I'm going to go with Chuba Hubbard here, but people listening won't know because the game's already over.
And then how about James Cook or Ramondre Stevenson?
I'm just picking on Worm because we're not allowed to use Thursday players for our start sits.
The sit show gets out early enough that people will hear this one.
Well, I'm just saying. There are plenty of guys I would have talked about Chuba Hubbard as a sit if I could have. But I wasn't
dear
allowed
Lord.
To.
Here we go. Erickson ranting and screaming at clouds.
James Cook or Ramondre Stevenson?
Oh, Stevenson. Easy.
All right.
Pick up that white flag, DBro. Pick it up, man.
I already did. Of course. Last week, I'm like, man, I don't know about Rachaad White. He scores twice. I don't know, man. I'm just done with Mondre. Mondre breaks off like his only big run of the entire freaking season.
To be fair,
I'm like,
he didn't really do anything else in that game besides the
That's
big
why,
run.
That's why it's funny because it's like,
Yeah.
of course, like DBro's like, I'm finally ready to give up. And then you finally see the explosive
I've
Mondre
had
we've been waiting
faith.
for.
Yeah.
I've had faith up until that point. He breaks off long run, and I'm like, I give up.
Yeah. All right. DBro, Kareem Hunt or Zack Moss. They're back-to-back in the rankings. You picked both of them. Who would you rather start?
I'll go Kareem Hunt only because he does still have a red zone role, which Moss does not.
And then also, since Mixon is ranked so high in ECR, I just wanted to ask, who are some other interesting names you would start over Joe Mixon?
I know everybody is so extremely down on Tony Pollard, but the matchup is amazing. Same thing with Bijan Robinson. I'd start both of those guys over Joe Mixon. I know Joe Mixon, but we've talked about Joe Mixon in the last few weeks. He's not playing amazing. The matchups have been extremely good. And I also think it's a red flag that he couldn't take advantage of a Buffalo Bills run defense last week, which everybody has been running all over this year.
Yeah. Let's go to the must-sit wide receivers. Erickson, starting with you.
George Pickens. His targets have been eradicated with Deontay Johnson back in the line. If you look at the 4 games that Deontay Johnson has played, George Pickens has a 17% target share in those games. He has finished as wide receiver 51, wide receiver 19, wide receiver 45. And last week, wide receiver 103 because he couldn't get his feet in bounds. It's just not a good spot for George Pickens. He's not the alpha in the targets. He basically just runs go routes on the perimeter and sideline routes, which are just like hard to sustain. I know we talked about Pickens as like a sell high guy when Deontay Johnson was coming back, and now we're starting to see like this is the issue with him in his role in this anemic offense. So it's tough to trust. The matchup also isn't great either. Might catch some coverage from Jair Alexander. The Packers have been overall pretty good against wide receivers, 7th best against perimeter receivers, 7th best overall against fantasy wide receivers this season. So George Pickens, and also he had this like really weird he scrubbed his Steelers stuff on social media after just one bad game where he didn't get the ball enough, and it was really weird. And they asked Mike Tomlin about it. He's like, pebble in my shoe, man. I don't really care about this. So just weird vibes overall from George Pickens. So I'm not so sure that this is a squeaky wheel game. They're going to get him the ball. It's they just want to win. And the way the Steelers win is ugly. It's not flashy, which doesn't play in George Pickens' favor. So I'm going to sit George Pickens.
He said pebble in my shoe. That sounds super annoying, actually. That doesn't sound like nothing. I've never heard that phrase before as to mean that means nothing. But
it sounds like nothing to me. I don't know.
I mean, it's a classic Tomlinism. It's just, I feel like you're walking along and you have a rock in your shoe. That's super annoying.
He didn't say a rock. He said a pebble.
Does that mean that he's going to get the ball to George Pickens? I guess is just a better way to
No, it has nothing to do with Pickens. I'm just confused by it.
I mean, if we're gonna take the Tomlinism a little bit further, then if anything, you should be a little more worried about Pickens. If he is the pebble in the shoe, then what do you do with the pebble? You just take the shoe and you empty it out and you forget about it.
Because it's annoying. It's not nothing.
Put the pebble in the shoe on the bench. He's not even out there.
Pickens is wide receiver 33 this week in ECR. Erickson, where do you have him?
I have Pickens. I mean, I could probably move him down, probably even because he's already been a boomer bust receiver anyway.
Let me change the question. Are you starting him at any point as long as Deontay Johnson is healthy, or is this more specifically about this week's matchup?
I mean, he has one good game with Deontay Johnson playing, and he's played 4.
Yep.
So it's the odds are, especially given the matchup, that this is probably not going to be a trend that continues favorably for him. There are other George Pickens versus Gabe Davis. Rather start Gabe Davis. He's got Josh Allen, and it's they could both basically do the same. They do the same thing every single week. They boom or bust.
I'll give you a good one, Erickson. Michael Thomas or George Pickens. I'm going to start MT over George Pickens this week.
I mean, at least I know MT is going to get me 4 for 40. Feel confident about that.
Pickens will get you 1 for 22.
Yeah, maybe you got just one pass. So yeah.
All right, let's move on from Pickens. DBro, give me your first must-sit wide receiver.
It's got to be Amari Cooper. And this comes down to if we think, and I do believe, that Deshaun Watson's going to struggle, foreshadowing, then Amari Cooper, his wide receiver 1, is going to struggle as well. Baltimore has been a shutdown pass defense. Yes, I said it, Worm, all season. Baltimore allowing the lowest PPR points per target and only 2 receiving touchdowns the entire season to boundary wide receivers, well, that's Amari Cooper's deal. So goodbye, Amari Cooper. You're not doing much of anything this week.
Yeah, I said this, I alluded to this earlier when we were talking about Gus Edwards, but like, I think that people are putting way too much stock in the fact that the Browns had DTR out there the first time they faced this Ravens defense. This Ravens defense makes every quarterback look like a 5th-round rookie in his first career game. I mean, I think they're going to put Deshaun Watson in an absolute blender this entire game.
Deshaun might just all of a sudden, the shoulder is acting up a little bit. Oh, no.
And listen, these guys are talented enough that they could prove me wrong, but I will absolutely not be starting a single Brown outside of maybe Jerome Ford in any lineup this week. I just wouldn't trust any of them.
I disagree.
All right, Erickson, give me your next must-sit wide receiver.
Jakobi Meyers. Somebody has to stop this man from scoring all the touchdowns. Devontae Adams needs to get his. So
I was like, Erickson, are you going to be that hero?
So I talked about Meyers last week, and of course he scores a rushing touchdown, like a wide receiver scoring a rushing touchdown on like an end-around play. Look, he's playing the Jets. It's the worst matchup you could ask for wide receivers. Meyers has been running supernova hot when it comes to touchdown production this year, but last week he had 5 targets. He has yet to eclipse 40 receiving yards in both starts by Aiden O'Connell this season. I mean, this game is so gross. Raiders, Jets. How did we get this game on Sunday Night Football?
The entire primetime slate is gross. It's Bears, Panthers, Raiders, Jets.
The schedule makers thought it was going to be. To be fair, the schedule makers thought it was going to be Jimmy G versus Aaron Rodgers whenever this was when this was first.
I'm not even sure that's that interesting.
No, it's exactly.
I'm not saying it is, but it's
with
better.
The Broncos last year, it was just like they thought Russ was going to be good, so they put the Broncos on all the primetime games.
When are the schedule makers going to learn that they're bad at this? They don't know which teams are going to be good.
This is why they put in the clause that they can flex, but this is the last week that they can't flex. So like. Now after this week, we're never going to see the Jets
flex this week and just chose not to. I might have read that wrong.
But I'm going to sit him.
You know that it's a problem when Tennessee Titans end up on so many island games every single year, and then we're all like, stop.
They're terrible.
My eyes are burning.
We've been robbed
They're bleeding.
of a lack of Titans Jaguars.
Dude, we also have Colts Patriots as an island game this week. Germany game. I mean,
I can't defend that one.
It's
I can't
awful.
defend that one.
And then the Germans thought they were getting Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and they're getting Matt Jones.
The best primetime matchup this week is Broncos Bills, which is like not even that good, but if that's the best one out of 4, that's a problem. Who are we talking about? Jakobi Meyers, DBro. What do you think about Meyers? He's wide receiver 35 in ECR.
I don't want to start him. I'm sorry. I'm with Erickson. There has to be somebody's got to put a halt to this, and I'm going to stand behind Erickson. He's my hero this week.
We're digging our heels in. All right, DBro, give me your next must-sit wide receiver.
Jordan Addison, man. And I understand that he's going to get the target volume. I get that. Josh Dobbs is a fantastic story. We got to talk about the fact that the New Orleans Saints are not allowing anything to perimeter wide receivers. Second lowest PPR points per target. He's going to run about 74% of his routes against Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo, who are both allowing below 80 passer ratings in their coverage this year. The Saints have given up production to the slot. It's not where Jordan Addison's going to operate, so you got to worry about Jordan Addison. I get if you're going to start him based off of volume as like a wide receiver 3 or a flex and stuff, but if your expectations are any higher than that, you're probably lying to yourself.
When we're at the point where Jefferson is fully healthy and back, and obviously we've got Dobbs now established as the starter, what do you think your weekly ranking of Addison will be at that point?
Depending on matchup, somewhere between wide receiver 23 and wide receiver 36, depending on the matchup.
Okay, that seems about reasonable. Erickson, where do you have Addison this week? He's wide receiver 28 in ECR.
Yeah, I'm in line with ECR. I'm a wide receiver 27. Again, the matchup's not great, but I just think Jordan Addison's good. So that's like one of these things where I can only rank him so low, and even if it's a lull game, like he's still the number 1 receiver, and I like Josh Dobbs a lot in this matchup. So,
all right, Erickson, sticking with you, give me your last must-sit wide receiver.
Courtland Sutton, again, fading guys on unsustainable touchdown streaks because Courtland Sutton just continues to twist the knife into my arm every single week because he keeps scoring touchdowns and he gets like 3 targets. So that's a reminder. He got 3 targets last time we saw the Denver Broncos play. Denver leads the NFL in passing touchdown percentage at 84%. 84% of their touchdowns scored have been through the air. That's not going to continue to be the case against the bad Buffalo Bills run defense with Javonte Williams, the workload that he got before the bye week, them coming out of the bye week. He's fully healthy. Like, they're ready to feed Juggernaut Javonte, in my opinion. So I think that's going to get away from Courtland Sutton. And when you actually look at who's been the target leader with Jerry Jeudy also healthy, it's been Jeudy. Like, he leads the team with 23% target share, 45% air yard share, and healthy games played. So I get the Bills' secondary hasn't been good, but I don't think that the Broncos are necessarily the team that's like, oh, like, we're going to throw all over Buffalo. We're going to head up to Buffalo and just throw all over the place. I don't think that's what they want to do. I think they want to give the ball to Javonte, and I think that's just going to hurt Courtland Sutton.
I'm not as in the weeds as you guys on a week-to-week basis in terms of some of the advanced metrics and just general, like, diving deep into the stats. But I am generally somebody who believes in the numbers and follows the percentages and analytics. And obviously that's kind of a very surface-level way of describing it. But I preface all that to say, maybe he's just a guy that they see as having good matchups in the red zone. Like, he scored a touchdown in 6 out of 8 weeks this season. They've targeted him even more than that when they're in that area of the field. Like, do you think there's anything to just like he and Russell Wilson have a good connection for when they're have a chance to score a touchdown?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's obviously why he's done. So then
why can't he keep it up?
Because it's not something that's super sustainable. Like, is he going to catch a touchdown every single week when he has 3 targets? Like, that's just a bad bet to make.
If those 3 targets all come in the red zone, doesn't that up his chances? I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but I mean, I don't think he's going to score a touchdown in 75% of his games like he has so far this year, but I think he can still score them more than any other receiver on this team.
I mean, that's possible, but I also think that why are they throwing the ball so aggressively in the red zone? Because they had injured running backs. Like, again, this Bills defense, how do you attack them? You attack them through the ground game, not through the air necessarily. So
should we come up with a second bet that we can't even determine what the loser's going to have to do, like Zay Flowers versus Demario Douglas?
We're leaving that up to I want to see people in the comments, because so far I'm winning. Demario Douglas is outscoring Zay Flowers by a significant margin because Zay Flowers basically did nothing last week. So
I'm still waiting on my Zach Ertz cash to get here. When is that coming, Erickson?
Well, speaking of Zay Flowers, DBro, who's your next must-sit wide receiver?
Yeah, I think we just have to be real, and I know Erickson talked about Courtland Sutton plunging the knife into his arm. Let's keep it real here. That knife is not in his arm; it's in the back of his ribs. He broke off the blade. It's simmering around. It's floating around inside. So just to give context about how salty Erickson is, but. Yeah, I'm going to sit Zay Flowers this week. I know I've been massive on Zay Flowers, but we've seen the usage kind of tick down since week 8. His target share has dropped to 11.7%. His air yard share has dropped below 10%. Mark Andrews has been getting more work as the clear number 1 option. And if you look at the Browns, yes, they've been mere mortals against perimeter wide receivers since week 6. So there's a path here, considering they've given up the 12th highest PPR points per target. But we also have to remind ourselves, Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson are extremely good cornerbacks. Both these guys are giving up an 80.6 passer rating. Emerson's at 40.8 this season. So I just don't see a big day for Zay. I think Baltimore is going to keep the ball on the ground, stay away from the strength of the Cleveland Browns defense, which is their secondary, and just run the dang ball all week. All game, excuse me.
4 targets, 3 catches, 56 yards in that first matchup with the Browns did Zay Flowers have. Let's go to our Who Do I Start tool. Erickson, George Pickens, or the guy you're betting on, Demario Douglas?
Demario Douglas. He's got a good matchup against the Colts. I know Kenny Moore is just like this unstoppable force, but they're throwing in his direction, so he's getting targeted at least. So I'll take my chances with Demario Douglas. Like George Pickens, I think that his prop is like a 44.5 receiving yards, something like that. It looks really low, but it's like, unless this guy gets 80 yards, he's going to get 0.
Under.
So again, I'm thinking like a clean sweep with all these player props. So follow me on the Betting Pros app. But yeah, under on George Pickens receiving yards this week, and I will go with Demario Douglas.
How about what's the link for that? Is it bettingpros.com/Courtland Sutton? What's that? I forget the link, Erickson.
Andrew Erickson, Erickson is one of those.
Okay, sorry. I got confused there for a second.
Erickson, Jakobi Meyers, or Jerry Jeudy?
I like Jerry Jeudy. He's the target share leader on the Broncos, and I think that he gets more targets this week than Sutton and Jakobi Meyers.
How about Courtland Sutton or Zay Flowers?
Ooh.
I would take Zay Flowers in that situation.
DBro, who are you taking in that one?
I'm higher on Sutton this week. I'm going to take Sutton in that. And just to double down with Erickson here, I know I'm giving him a lot of crap on this show, but I will take Demario Douglas over George Pickens. So book it.
How about Pickens or Flowers, DBro?
I'll take Flowers. I don't have a lot of faith in Pickens to do much of anything. Deontay Johnson has reaffirmed that he is the clear, and it is not even close. Like, Pebble, you could do whatever you want to in that shoe, baby. It does not matter. Deontay Johnson is the wide receiver one for this
how,
team.
Like, Deontay Johnson commands like so many targets like every year of his career, and then he comes back and he kind of suddenly commands all these targets again. It's crazy. It's crazy.
So
insane. It's like people would have known that was coming. Oh my god.
So DBro, are you starting Deontay Johnson over Amari Cooper then?
Oh yeah. Okay. Deontay Johnson, I've got him ranked as a top 20 wide receiver this week. He's right next to DeAndre Hopkins and a little foreshadowing, Calvin Ridley.
All right. And how about Jordan Addison or Gabe Davis?
I'll play Gabe Davis. I get the volume reasons for to play Jordan Addison, but the matchup is extremely freaking tough.
All right, Erickson, give me your must-sit quarterback, tight end, and defense/special teams.
All right, combo here for Packers players. Jordan Love sitting him. The Steelers defense has a bad secondary, but I don't think Jordan Love can actually take advantage of it. And if you look at the Steelers' last 4 quarterbacks they have faced, Lamar, Trevor Lawrence, Stafford, they have all been bad. They've allowed 12.2 fantasy points per game to the last 4 quarterbacks that they have faced. So, I mean, you're hoping you can get like 20 points from your quarterback. I mean, the fact that Jordan Love has been scoring fantasy points at all is like miraculous because of just how bad he has been in real life.
Smoke screen.
So yeah, Jordan Love, I want to sit him. And same thing with Luke Musgrave. He delivered last week. It was a good matchup against the Rams. Not a good matchup against the Steelers. 4th fewest fantasy points allowed to tight ends. And this target share in Green Bay is so flat. Like every week, everyone gets 4 targets. So it's a matter of like who's going to score the touchdown. And if I had to put my chips on anybody, it would be Christian Watson, just because the Steelers get beat by explosive plays. So that's who I would bet on scoring, not Luke Musgrave after he scored last week. So I'll sit him. And then the Atlanta Falcons, their defense has regressed. They don't have Grady Jarrett anymore, and he was kind of like the engine to their defensive line. So on the road against Kyler Murray, I think this Cardinals team is going to like show up and play pretty well with their quarterback back. I think they're re-energized, so just don't really want any part of the Falcons DST that's just kind of been mid this season.
Jordan Love or Deshaun Watson this week? I have to make this decision actually in a Superflex league. So
I would start Jordan Love because he finds ways to score fantasy points somehow, some way. And again, like I said, like I think Christian Watson could have a big play, and that might be enough to just get him over the hump with whatever Deshaun Watson does.
Yeah. DBro, I'm going to ask you the same question before you give me your picks, because Deshaun Watson is your pick. Are you starting Deshaun Watson or Jordan Love?
Oh, good Lord. I don't want either, but I'll go with Jordan Love. He just finds a way to post relevant enough fantasy scores over the last few weeks. Yeah. And Deshaun Watson's running hot, man. He's had great matchups, and this is definitely not this. Like, so, yeah, he's my QB sit of the week, man. I mean, looking at like what he's done, I don't think it's been a lot of smoke and mirrors. Good matchups. If you look at amongst 35 qualifying quarterbacks, this man's outside the top 20 or the top 15 quarterbacks in passing grade, yards per attempt, and adjusted completion rate. You marry that with the Baltimore Ravens over the last 4 weeks, allowing the second fewest fantasy points via passing. I don't need part of Deshaun Watson. Continuing with the guys that I'm sitting here, Cade Otton. I know he had a monster week last week. If you picked him up off the waiver wire, kudos to you. Do not play him this week, though. Tennessee Titans are shutting down all things tight end related. 12th lowest receiving yards a game allowed to the position. 5th fewest fantasy points per game allowed. And they are the only defense in the NFL to not allow a receiving touchdown to tight ends this season. Sit Cade Otton. And as far as the defense, I know I brought them up last week, but people need to keep hearing this. Do not play the Buffalo Bills. You need to drop them. They are not a DST that you need to be worried about. The injuries have taken a toll on this defense, whether you want to talk about Matt Milano, you want to talk about Tre'Davious White. Since week 5, even bringing this over to the nerddom out of the real football takes and things like that, DST 24 in fantasy. No, don't play them. They're averaging 5 fantasy points per game, man. Like, they've been bad. Drop them. Do not even consider picking them back up. No.
Deshaun Watson or Will Levis?
Will Levis.
All right, we'll get out of there on
Go
that.
Levis.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. For DBro and Erickson, I am Ryan Wormeli. We'll see you again next time.